Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's continue with the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker, this time starting with chapter 6. Now the entire chapter has to do with something associated with a topic called Operation Majestic 12. This is apparently something that showcases the best evidence yet when it comes to the government and knowing that there's an alien presence out there. So pretty interesting stuff. I was looking at some of the information here and there, and I've once again parted here in several parts. And then each one, including part 1 here, I'll just include my own thoughts and benefits on it afterward. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's start chapter 6. Once again, the title of it is Operation Majestic 12. The first segment is called Background. So here's what it states. The Majestic 12 documents have come to be regarded by many ufologists as the best evidence for government knowledge of the alien presence. Not surprisingly, for every researcher who accepts their authenticity, there is another who maintains that they are either a clever hoax or else part of an elaborate campaign of disinformation designed to obscure the path to the truth. The origin of the Majestic 12 controversy can be traced to Sergeant Richard C. Doty, one-time special agent with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations at Kirtland Air Force Base. In 1981, Doty leaked a document to researcher William Moore, who at the time was on the board of directors of the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization. The Project Aquarius document was apparently a teletype message dated November 7, 1980, from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations headquarters in Washington, D.C., to the OSI at Kirtland Air Force Base. The message was classified secret and contained the results of the analysis of several UFO photographs taken by Dr. Paul Benowitz. According to the analysis, the object in the photograph was saucer-shaped, approximate diameter 37 feet. There was also a trilateral insignia on the lower part of the UFO. The trilateral insignia would come to be regarded from some researchers as the flag of the alien nation. In part, the Aquarius document stated, USAF no longer publicly active in UFO researchers. However, USAF still has interest in all UFO sightings over USAF installation and test ranges. Several other government agencies led by NASA actively investigate legitimate sightings, though through covert cover. NASA filters results of sightings to appropriate military departments with interest in that particular sighting, and the official government policy and results of Project Aquarius is still classified top secret, with no dissemination outside official intelligence channels and with restricted access to MJ-12. A subsequent AFOSI investigation of the Aquarius document revealed that it was not authentic, being riddled with flaws in style and format. However, Moore explained this by saying that he had retyped the original document and that this version had been inspected by the AFOSI. Throughout the early 1980s, Richard Doty met with several UFO researchers, informing them that he and the OSI were deeply involved with the UFO phenomenon. He himself had been assigned to investigate sightings and encounters, and he claimed to have access to a number of briefing papers dealing with the subject. According to Doty, the U.S. government had entered a secret treaty with the aliens in which the government agreed to the abduction of humans and the mutilation of cattle in return for items of alien technology. It is rumored that the F-117A Nighthawk and the B-2 stealth bomber used alien-derived components, which does make one wonder why they are still powered by jet engines. In April 1983, Linda Moulton Howe, most famous for her excellent research on cattle mutilations, met with Doty in Albuquerque at the Kirtland Air Force Base AFOSI office. There, she was shown several documents purporting to be briefing papers for the President of the United States. Doty told her that his supervisors wanted her to see the documents, but that she could not take notes. The information contained in the documents was astonishing, to say the least. Apparently, there had been a number of UFO crashes in the late 1940s and early 1950s, mainly in the American Southwest and northern New Mexico. The cause of the crashes was radar, which interfered with the UFO's flight control systems. A crash at Roswell in 1949 yielded 6 dead aliens and 1 still living, which survived at Los Alamos until June 1952. This creature, designated EBE-1, EBE stands for Extraterrestrial Biological Entity, told the Air Force investigators about the aliens' role in human evolution, which was quite extensive, including the manipulation of human DNA beginning 25,000 years ago. Modifications were made 15,000, 5,000, and 2,500 years ago, and EBE-1 also said that the aliens had created a being 2,000 years ago who would teach humans to love each other and renounce violence. Also included in the documents Linda Howe examined was a list of UFO and alien-related government research projects. For instance, there was a project called Project Garnet, which succeeded in answering all questions regarding the origin and evolution of Homo sapiens. Project Sigma dealt with ongoing attempts to establish permanent lines of communication with the aliens, and Project Snowbird dealt with the development and implementation of alien technology, and Project Aquarius was an overall effort to accumulate all available information on the aliens and their technology. The sudden release of this information to Howe was allegedly a prelude to the release of several thousand feet of film showing crashed spacecraft, alien bodies, the survivor of the Roswell crash, and a meeting between the military and a saucer crew that occurred at Holloman Air Force Base, more of which is going to be described later. Doty revealed that the aliens live on a hot desert world. Their houses are carved from soil and rock, and they live like Pueblo Indians. When asked if the aliens' home-star system was Zeta Reticuli, Doty refused to answer, but claimed that there is an exchange program in which research scientists are studying their planet like they're studying ours. According to Doty, EBE-1 died from unknown causes despite efforts to save him. Howe asked if he said anything about God. Doty replied that the aliens said our souls recycle, that reincarnation is real. It's the machinery of the universe. Unfortunately, the several thousand feet of film were never released for political reasons. As a result of this setback, the UFO documentary that Howe had been planning had to be abandoned. Although he admitted that he had met with Linda Howe, Richard Doty denied having shown her any secret documents or having promised to release film footage. In a letter to researcher Barry Greenwood, he denied even knowing of any government investigation of UFOs. Howe maintained that this was not true and signed a notarized declaration testifying that she was shown the documents. Timothy Good believes that Linda Howe was given disinformation, a certain amount of truth mixed with a certain number of lies, perhaps for the very purpose of making sure that her documentary never got off the ground. The next phase in the controversy occurred on December 11th, 1984, when Jamie Shandera, a 45-year-old film producer based in Los Angeles, received a curious package in the mail. Inside the package was a canister containing a roll of exposed but undeveloped Tri-X 35mm film. Shandera was due to have lunch with none other than William Moore. The two had met previously to discuss a UFO-related film project that never came to fruition and had remained friends since. And he took the roll of film with him. When he showed the canister to Moore in the restaurant, describing how it had arrived, the two men immediately left and then went to Moore's house. There they managed to develop some sheets which revealed 7 pages of a typewritten document. At the top of each page was a stamp which read, "Top Secret, Magic, Eyes Only." Apparently, the sheets contained a briefing documentation on Operation Majestic 12 for the attention of President-elect Dwight D. Eisenhower. It was dated November 18, 1952. The briefing officer was Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter. The Majestic 12 had been established by President Truman as a direct result of the Roswell UFO crash of 1947. According to the document, on July 7, 1947, a secret operation was begun to assure recovery of the wreckage of this object for scientific study. During the course of this operation, aerial reconnaissance discovered that 4 small human-like beings had apparently ejected from the craft at some point before it exploded. They had fallen to Earth about 2 miles east at the wreckage site. All four were dead and badly decomposed due to action by predators and exposure to the elements during the approximately 1 week time period which had elapsed before the discovery. A special scientific team took charge of removing these bodies for study. The wreckage of the crash was also removed to several different locations. Civilian and military witnesses in the area were debriefed, and news reporters were given the effective cover story that the object had been a misguided weather balloon. The document described Majestic 12 as a top secret research and development intelligence operation responsible directly and only to the President of the United States. The group was established by special classified executive order of President Truman on September 24, 1947, nearly 3 months after the alleged Roswell UFO crash. Next segment is called Membership of Majestic 12. According to the briefing document, the original members of the Majestic 12 group were as follows: Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter, Dr. Vandiver Bush, Defense Secretary James V. Forrestal, General Nathan F. Twining, General Hoyt S Vandenberg, Dr. Detlef Bronk, Dr. Jerome Hunsaker, Rear Admiral Sidney W. Sowers, Gordon Gray, Dr. Donald Menzel, General Robert M. Montague, and then Dr. Lloyd V. Berkner. Defense Secretary Forrestal committed suicide on May 12, 1949 after a nervous breakdown, and he was replaced on August 1, 1950 by General Walter B. Smith. A few words on each member are in order. Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter was the third director of the Central Intelligence Group from 1947 to 1950 and the first director of the Central Intelligence Agency, established incidentally in September 1947, the same month as Majestic 12. Hillenkoetter was convinced that UFOs represented a genuine mystery and were most likely machines under intelligent control. He made no secret of his convictions and accused the Air Force of censoring UFO sightings. He is quoted as saying, "It is imperative that we learn where UFOs come from and what their purpose is." Following his retirement from the Navy in June 1957, Hillenkoetter joined the board of directors of NICAP, which, as Timothy Good states, put him in an excellent position to monitor the activities of this influential civilian group. Dr. Vandiver Bush was a world-class scientist who advised President Truman throughout the Second World War. Dr. Bush organized the National Defense Resources Council in 1941 and the Office of Scientific Research and Development in 1943. The latter organization was instrumental in the creation of the Manhattan Project and the first atomic bomb. In his book, Above Top Secret, Timothy Good draws our attention to a top-secret memorandum released by the Canadian government in which scientist Wilbur Smith referred to Dr. Bush as heading a small group set up to investigate UFOs. Good then asks, not unreasonably, if the small group was actually Majestic 12. Defense Secretary James V. Forrestal had been President Truman's Undersecretary of the Navy from 1944 to 1947. In September 1947, Truman authorized Forrestal and Vandiver Bush to set up Majestic 12 with all due speed and caution. In 1947, Forrestal was appointed to the newly created position of Secretary of Defense, from which he resigned in 1949 following a serious nervous breakdown. He committed suicide 2 months later. General Nathan F. Twining was appointed Commanding General of the Air Materiel Command at Wright Field, now Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio in 1945. In 1953, he was appointed Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, and in 1957, he became Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. Timothy Good reminds us that Twining was of the opinion that UFOs were something real and not visionary or fictitious, and reports that Twining suddenly canceled a trip to the West Coast on July 8, 1947, less than 1 week after the Roswell crash, was due to a very important and sudden matter. According to William Moore, reporters were told that Twining was at the time probably in Washington, D.C. In fact, he was in New Mexico, where he remained until July 10th. General Hoyt S Vandenberg was appointed the second director of the Central Intelligence Group, which became the Central Intelligence Agency in 1947. It was Vandenberg who had ordered the Air Technical Intelligence Center to destroy its classified estimate of the situation, which had concluded that UFOs were interplanetary. According to skeptic Philip Klass, it makes no sense for Vandenberg to have dismissed the Washington invasion as nothing more than temperature inversions if he knew that UFOs were alien spacecraft. On the other hand, in view of the absolute secrecy desired by the government regarding the true nature of UFOs, there was nothing else he could have done. Dr. Bertloff Bronk, another scientific advisor to President Truman, was chairman of the National Research Council and was a member of the Medical Advisory Board of the Atomic Energy Commission. Dr. Bronk's qualifications in the fields of physiology and biophysics, with emphasis on the transmission of nerve impulses, led to his performing autopsies on the bodies discovered at the Roswell crash site. Dr. Bronk was also a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee to the Brookhaven National Laboratory, along with Dr. Edward Condon, director of the National Bureau of Standards and of the UFAF-sponsored Committee on the Scientific Study of UFOs, which concluded that UFOs were unworthy of scientific investigation. Dr. Jerome Hunsaker held credentials that would have made him invaluable in the analysis of the materials recovered at Roswell. A former head of the Departments of Aeronautical and Mechanical Engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, he was appointed chairman of the National Advisory Committee on Aerospace at the time of the Majestic 12's creation. Rear Admiral Sidney W. Sowers was the first director of the Central Intelligence Group from January to June 1946, and he became executive secretary of the National Security Council in 1947. Although he retired in 1950, he was retained as a special consultant to the president on matters of security. Once again, Philip Klass is unhappy with Sowers staying in Majestic 12 after his retirement and wonders why his replacement at the NSC was not recruited to the group instead. However, journalist C.D.B. Bryan makes a good point when he counters that the fewer people involved in the super-secret Majestic 12, the more secure the group would be. Gordon Gray was another member who posed great problems for Philip Klass, according to C.D.B. Bryan. In 1947, Gray was an assistant secretary of the Army, hardly a position that would have commended him to the creators of Majestic 12. In fact, he was not appointed secretary of the Army until 2 years later. Why, asked Klaus, was he considered worthy of membership? Once again, Brown may have the answer. In post-war Washington, Gray's reputation as a gentleman with intelligence, reliability, and without political ties or debts would have made him an attractive addition to any secret executive-ordered intelligence gathering committee. Bryan adds that Gray's legal and journalistic training would have made him a good investigator. In 1950, Gray was appointed as special assistant to President Truman on national security affairs, and investigator William Steinman states that in 1951, Gray directed the Psychological Strategy Board, which is mentioned by General Walter B. Smith, Forrestal's replacement in Majestic 12, in the 1952 CIA memorandum dealing with the psychological implications of UFOs. Dr. Donald Menzel was one of the most outspoken of UFO skeptics and wrote several books debunking the subject. This had led Philip Klass to suggest that the hoaxer of the Majestic 12 documents included Menzel in the committee as a perverse kind of punishment for his years of reigning on the UFO parade. However, Dr. Menzel was also chairman of the Department of Astronomy at Harvard and head of the Harvard Observatory for Solar Research. He was a world-class astronomer and as such would have been an essential addition to the group. In addition to the redoubtable Stanton Friedman informs us in his 1996 book, The Top Secret Magic, that Dr. Menzel had been the subject of loyalty hearings in 1951 and was in danger of losing his Air Force security clearance. Friedman wonders why he had such a clearance in the first place. As it turned out, one of Menzel's staunchest supporters had been none other than Vandiver Bush. After some intensive and painstaking research, Friedman discovered that Donald Menzel seemed to have led a double life, consulting work for the National Security Agency, the CIA, the military, and many corporations. Menzel was also highly regarded for his outstanding discretion with regards to classified material. His supporters at the loyalty hearings maintained that he was totally trustworthy and extraordinarily discreet. It should be mentioned that these loyalty hearings were merely a part of the general paranoia extant in the United States at the time and were the result of insignificant events, such as Menzel's trip to the Soviet Union on an eclipse expedition in 1936. Menzel was also an expert cryptographer, which surely would have been essential in the interpretation of any markings in the Roswell wreckage. General Robert M. Montague was director of the Anti-Aircraft and Guided Missiles branch of the U.S. Army Artillery School and was commanding general of the Atomic Energy Commission installation at Sandia Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. As such, he would surely have been deeply involved with any attempt to monitor and track the movements of UFOs or to assess their performance with a view to possible methods of combating them. Dr. Lloyd V. Berkner was another respected scientist who was executive secretary of the Joint Research and Development Board in 1946 under Dr. Vandiver Bush. He also chaired a special committee to study that led to the establishment of the Weapons System Evaluation Group and served on the Robertson panel. Let's go ahead and we'll stop that here. Once again, this was Chapter 6, Part 1, dealing with the mysterious Operation Majestic 12. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. And again, it's from the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker. For starters, what a weird chapter, right? It seems like it's going to be several parts of the chapter itself dedicated to Operation Majestic 12, but it goes into very detailed information. I mean, something like this is, I call it weird because you would not expect it to have so much emphasis on the detail, but it does. So I've never heard of Majestic 12 before. Some of you that were out there, and let me know if you have, but it does seem like this is like the government's response or some kind of group that was formed when it comes to their knowledge on alien presence. And then as the chapter, at least as part 1, heavily detailed, it's associated with the Roswell incident, or at least one of the Roswell incidences. It looks like here you had that situation where from the 40s to the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, that there was these UFO crashes. And who knew? They were started apparently by radar. Apparently radar messed up these UFOs. And so because of it, they started crashing here and there. And one of them was the infamous Roswell one. Then there was that other segment stating that the technology associated with aliens and UFOs is something that is being traded with the aliens. So in other words, the government is allowing the abductions of humans and cattle in exchange for trading of alien technology. It's kind of sick when you think about it, if it really was true or is true to this day, because what about those poor people, right? I mean, technology is one thing, but those people are basically marked or scarred for life, or if they're even found again, because of what occurred to them. And then here you have the information as well stating that the membership associated with this group is very esteemed, apparently made up by a who's who of people within various forms of government departments, and including one person who the author was mentioning, that Stan Freeman was stating that, hey, why is this guy in here? But otherwise, it's still something else that stands out. And then the other thing that really wanted to highlight from this chapter was EBE-1, Extraterrestrial Biological Entity 1, the so-called survivor of the Roswell crash, the one that basically gave all the information associated with what was happening with human evolution and aliens, how aliens are manipulating DNA from 25,000 years ago and then going in increments of 15, 5, 25, and so on when it comes to thousands of years, and how that's basically shaped humanity to what it is today. So if one believes all of this, then truly Operation Majestic 12 is something else. Like here you have something that is super top secret stuff that apparently was the government's response to all this alien presence. So I'll save part 2 and then let's see what it talks about afterwards. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.